to welcome you to this lecture, which is organized by the Political Studies Unit and the Arab Center for Research and Policy Studies. On the 7th of October, the Islamic resistance movement Hamas waged a surprise attack on Israel, which reverberated throughout the world and led to the killing of 1,200 Israelis and the injuring of some 3,000 and capturing of about 250 people. Israel responded by waging war on all the civilians, claiming that there is no innocent amongst them, and the attack had a blistering effect on the world and concerned the world for the last 2 months, taking attention away from other wars like the major war in Europe on the Ukraine, and the attack broke Israel's supremacy and the military intelligence levels, and the war is considered a major turning point in the struggle and the conflict in Palestine, which is ongoing for more than 75 years, and it will impact the entire region and maybe the world, even according to Joe Biden. Israel considers it an existential war. Iran considers it a rehearsal of any possible war with it, and Biden links it to the conflict with Russia over the Ukraine and China over Taiwan and the future of the Middle East. In other words, the war has led to an unprecedented discussion on the political, ethical, and legal aspect of it, which is the title of our lecture, The War on Gaza, Politics, Ethics, and International Law. I know of no other lecturer other than Dr. Azmi who encompasses knowledge of this conflict, and I know there is no bigger concern for him than the Palestinian cause. He needs no introductions, but I must say the lecture will be divided to 3 parts. First, on a prologue and political context, and also the second part will allude to the discussion amongst the elites in the West, and the third part on the genocide Israel is waging. Dr. Azmi Bishara does not need any introduction, but maybe briefly I can mention some of his achievements. Dr. Azmi is the Director General of the Arab Center and the chairman of the board of directors of the Doha Institute, and he has many publications in political thought, philosophy, and sociology, and he has books on Palestine and the Pan-Arabism and to be an Arab in 2009, and religion and secularity or secularism in 2015, armies and politics in 2017, ISIS, a general framework and a critical study, and in response to the question of populism, democratization in 2020. Some of these books have become references, and lately he published a book on the question of the state, the philosophical and political aspects. He has publications in English in 2020 on Palestine, another book on Salafism concepts, on Salafism's concepts and context, which was published 2020, and Sectarianism Without Sects by Oxford, and also Ivy Towers published a trilogy on Arab revolutions. I want to delve directly into the lecture and give the floor to Dr. Azmi. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Dr. Marwan has saved me a long time, and to save the time for introductions, but tell them. I will start with a political context. The Hamas operation on the 7th of October on the Israeli army camps and some kibbutzes, which a response and proved a seismic event for Israel and the international community. And prior to that, and Israel before that managed to rid itself of any commitments towards the Oslo process, and the Palestinian question was by and large being ignored, and also the Israelis turned the Gaza Strip into a huge prison. The assault was not a spontaneous, the result of meticulously planned and 2-year training process. And prior to the assault, it was said that the year 2022 was the worst when it comes to the settlement, which was intensified in 2020, and the incursions into the Al-Aqsa Mosque. And this shows that Israel did not benefit from the prior attacks like Saif al-Quds launched by attacks on the Al-Aqsa Mosque, and also the normalization efforts intensified and the Palestinian question was ignored. The only talk was of improving the life of the Palestinians and the Abraham Accords. The 7th of October, let's call them the 7th of October, led to an anger and outrage which led the Israeli society losing its balance, because it entailed attacks on the areas of the borders of the 4th of June 1964. It was more like a campaign, a military campaign, rather than attacks by Palestinian organizations. And it had different elements like planning, reconnaissance, taking captives, attacks, destroying targets. And this is surprising because it was conducted by a faction, a small faction, which is active in a small area under siege for nearly 15 years. For the Israelis, the Israeli government, anger was mixed with an existential fear. This time it was not just the propaganda that this is an entity which is in danger because it's occupying other lands, but Israel thought that if this operation goes without a response, then Israel will be facing a real existential threat because it's, it's not existential in the sense that, in the physical sense of the word, but Israel's deterrence has collapsed and led to fears amongst the countries which want to normalize with Israel, let alone the countries which do not want that. So the Israeli narrative and was Israel's conclusions was shared by international powers to the necessity of getting rid of Hamas, although they knew that the American collusion and the green light can be used by Israel as a pretext not for genocide but to activate plans to expel the Palestinians. And Netanyahu